Hello, and welcome back to the Time on Feet podcast. I'm Alyssa,
And I'm George.
and thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to talk about the invisible work of running. Um, Running isn't just physical, it's planning, it's prepping, it's tracking, it's worrying and adjusting. Does that sound familiar to you guys? Um, First, though, before we talk about that, let's do a quick check in. So, what's new?
It's my favorite part. Just
We
checking
don't
in.
talk a lot about this all the time, but
Right. Well, sometimes.
Yeah.
We did a really good run today in that it felt really good.
Yeah.
It was long.
Yeah.
By most anybody's standards. Yeah, maybe not by yours, but certainly by mine. And everything felt really good. So that was, for me, that was a big highlight today. We went to the steam bath and got our sweat on, which was cool. Left there lightheaded. Drove a little bit squirrely when I got out of there.
I'd say it's a good steam bath session when you're
can't see straight.
mentally, yeah, when you can't see straight.
Had a monster deep dish pizza for dinner, which we're both probably feeling that.
I'm ready for round two, but it was good.
There's a lot of pizza.
Yeah.
For those in Red Deer, check it out, the Gutter.
Yeah.
Pizza. My niece
So
works
good.
there.
Yeah.
Free publicity. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good promo, but check it out. Good pizza. Feeling good. Yeah. Really feeling well after that big run. Huge run for me. I feel good. Yourself?
Yeah. If we could talk about the run this entire podcast, I would, because it was just that good. It was one of those runs.
We can. It's our podcast.
That's true. We can talk about whatever we want. But, a lot of times they just are what they are, right? Like, and sometimes they're difficult. And sometimes I was telling you earlier, like, I'm kind of in that in between phase in training where I've been training since January for a marathon. And now it's months in, we still have snow on the ground. I'm ready for spring. I'm kind of sick of the treadmill. And you're kind of in that in between phase where stuff is like a little bit boring.
Yeah.
And my runs, I've really struggled. I've got up and I've done them, but I haven't felt like that motivation, or it hasn't been like super fun or anything, right? But today was everything clicked. We were just cooking it. It was extremely windy, but it was such a good run. I think it just was one of those.
On new shoes too. You did it with brand new shoes.
Brand new shoes today, trying them out. And honestly, it was just a lot of fun. Like, we had fun. We talked for a little bit. We listened to music for their last half, and everything clicked.
And you had a gel that changed your life.
Yeah, I had a really good gel. Stay tuned for some gear check. We're going to
Thou that shall not be named.
different gear.
The
I'm going to
gel.
keep this one, but while I try it out, I've only tried it once, so I can't really say. But yeah, I think that it was just so much fun. And then we went to the steam room after, like you mentioned. So honestly, overall a good day. Lots of exercise and lots of rest and recovery. And we're going to be continuing to recover later today. So,
Boots.
do some boots and compression boots and relax.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, getting into the topic of our pod today, the invisible work of running. This is something that's kind of a little bit been on our mind because it's a lot of planning, it's a lot of prepping, it's a lot of tracking and trying to make the run happen. Honestly, it takes so much preparation to find the time and the ability to even make a run happen. So I think the mental load is maybe the first point that we'll hone in on. It's like the gear, it's the nutrition, it's checking the weather, it's scheduling it in. I feel like that can be mentally really taxing.
Yeah, before we had even landed on this as a topic, we were going back and forth on, gear and shoes and training plans and when we're going to fit it all in. And I think it kind of dawned on us that sometimes it's really hard to shut it off. It's not just the physical side, for sure. That the mental pieces, like you just alluded to, there's, so many. It could be anything and everything, but it's almost like it's just playing on your mind all the time. And that can feel overwhelming in and of itself. And then when you have a goal in mind, like if you're training for a race, if you have some target that you've honed in on, I think it's amplified. At that point, you're likely having to balance, a schedule, a block, your training, whatever that might look like, depending on what you do, how many dependents you have in your life, what your job's like. Maybe you're a shift worker, maybe you work away, maybe getting runs in is in and of itself difficult on a normal day. That's mentally taxing. You know, you want to improve. And I feel like we all want to, at least at the very least, feel good when we're out there running, if not improve and get faster, get better, or feel better as we do it. So there's almost always something that you're going to be juggling mentally. And that could be, you know, your diet. For us, I know what around race season that it's, and we're not quite into race season yet, but we've already started strategizing on everything from nutrition, gear, training, and that's, it's a lot of work. You think, oh, you just got to slap on a pair of shoes and run, which of course you can do, but so many different aspects that play into it. And I think if you're trying to, you know, squeeze the best out of yourself, that there's going to be some things that become mentally taxing throughout the year.
Yeah. And I think that that mental checklist before too is huge, right? Because you're putting a lot of thought into the process,
Yeah.
and it can even be shorter runs. It's not as much, but even then you are checking weather. You're trying to figure out what to wear. You're trying to figure out a big problem that we have here in central Alberta is figuring out what to put on our feet, whether it's trail shoes, road running shoes, ice bugs, like shoes with studs. Like, what's the weather going to do? And it can change so quickly. Some sidewalks are, completely bare, and others are soaking wet and icy. So I know we go back and forth so much about that. That alone,
Right.
just the footwear, right? And then even just, yeah,
But something as peculiar as what side of the sidewalk might not have as much ice.
yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
telling that we get down to that
yeah,
granular level
yeah.
planning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to
And
cut you
like
off.
today, it was definitely, we were trying to figure out where to go and where to run and how to get all of our kilometers in. And even that, I mean, we went back and forth 14 times yesterday as far as which route we're going to take because we're kind of getting burnt out with the routes that we've been taking too because we've been
Yeah.
doing them so much. But, and so even that alone, it can be enjoyable. Like I like planning out routes with you, but it's all mentally taxing. It's
Mhm.
all like that mental load, right? Um,
Totally.
and it kind of parallels the mental load of life too, because when you think about running and all that encompasses, and if you are that person who has to schedule it in and figure out your nutrition, your gear, and the weather, I mean, that's just like a day in the life of us, right? We're
Yeah.
constantly trying to schedule, and not only us, but, others. And we're also trying to figure out you know, how we're going to fit in lunch breaks, how we're going to get home to let dogs out, and how you're
Right.
going to get groceries and what you're going to have for dinner. So they kind of parallel one another.
Yeah, I don't think you're ever too far from
Yeah.
one of those things. I mean, running is part of your life, and when it's so heavily ingrained in what you do, I
Yeah.
think it is one and the same in a sense,
Hmm.
and is certainly a parallel. Yeah, it's it almost mirrors your work life and
Yeah.
in the sense of planning and
Yeah.
making sure things kind of tickety boo go along without a hitch.
And that can be hard to
Yeah.
schedule those runs in, right? Like you have to schedule it in as almost as if it's, and I think of it like this a lot, but like a part-time job. Like,
Right.
when am
Yeah.
I going to? It's obviously not the same amount of hours, and not quite as taxing as another job would be. But this is kind of my side hustle that makes no money. So it's maybe not working very well. But you have to schedule it in, and you have to make sure that it's on your list. It's a priority. And I was telling you that yesterday I went for a run in the morning before work, had a very busy day at work. And I said to myself probably 15 times throughout the day, I'm so glad I ran
Yeah.
this morning. And who wants to wake up at 5 a.m. to run, right? But
Right.
you schedule it in. I knew I would have a busy day, so I scheduled
Yeah.
it in, just like we did today with our long
Absolutely.
run.
Yeah, I think, and that maybe is in a roundabout way why we wanted to talk about this particular topic is that,
Yeah.
well, at least our perception is that this is probably something everybody
Hmm.
feels is
Yeah.
that, you go through, you're physically tired, you're broke after you buy all your gear. There's
Yeah.
stress there, but we probably all feel at times like, holy shit,
Yeah.
when is when's it going to get easy?
Yeah.
Or, when is this going to feel awesome? And today it felt awesome. But
Yeah.
most of the time it's a grind, it's
Yeah.
a slog. And when you hear somebody describe a pursuit in that way, that means that it's mentally taxing.
Yeah.
I mean, I often when I'm running, I've run 3 days in a row. That's a lot for me.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that right now. But if you're running 6 days in a row
Yeah.
and taking 1 day a week off like you do,
Yeah.
that's a lot of running.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that at 5 in the morning,
Yeah.
4:30 in the morning, 8 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
9 o'clock at night, those are suboptimal times. Let's be honest. Like you're squeezing it in because other things take priority
Yeah.
unless you're a professional runner or athlete and you're getting paid to do this. It becomes a mental, you know, issue sometimes.
Yeah.
And I mean, finding the motivation, the internal drive can be its own problem.
Yeah.
But then it's the weight of the world can feel like it's on you sometimes. Like, how do we get all this done and schedule our lives
Yeah.
and go to work? And that's what I want to talk about because
Mhm.
we know that we're not alone in this. Let's normalize mental distress in running. Kind of,
Yeah.
you know, it can be a heavy thing. Let's take, you know, some of the focus off the physicality because
Mhm.
I think a lot of people, especially when we're talking to non-runners, they go like, that must be so hard. Your knees must be sore.
Mhm.
Your joints must be sore. But sometimes it's like, you know, my mind can get numb from
Yeah.
this too. And of course, we do it as a bit of a reprieve from the realities of the world, the stress of the workday. It's good to get out there, clear your head. It's meditative, mostly joy, but
Yeah.
definitely there's those times when things are just heavy. That is something I think we all have, and we have to fight through it, work through it,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know. And that's
Yeah.
what we wanted to chat about that today.
Yeah, and that brings us kind of to our next point actually is when the load does get heavy, like burnout from just one more thing to do, right? Everyone is so busy, no one really has time. We really if we were to itemize the things that we have to do in a day, I mean realistically we don't actually have time to run, but we make
No,
time and we make it a priority, but we have the same 24 hours that everyone else has, right?
absolutely.
So but I think when the load can get heavy is where that burnout can seep in from just one more thing to have to schedule in or one more thing to have to do and prioritize. So, do you ever feel that? Like
Yeah.
when you need to, whether it's running or even another physical pursuit, have to factor that in? Does that feel hard?
I mean, yeah, for sure. And it's not that it just feels hard, it is hard.
Yeah.
And I think, as with anything that's hard, if you don't treat it as such and take steps to make it easier, then it will just be hard. And perhaps your mindset shifts from that of a healthy one to an unhealthy one, and it becomes a burden. And we don't want that, right? We want to have longevity in running. And I think that for a lot of people, it's about, you know, doing that self check in
Yeah.
and figuring out what your capacity is
Yeah.
for this, whether this is recreational, whether it's, you know, it's a semi-professional pursuit or a professional pursuit. We all know ourselves to a degree. We know what we're capable of. We know when things, I think a lot of us know, I shouldn't say everyone, when things become too heavy
Yeah.
and too much. And yeah, lightening the load is important. If you want to have longevity in the sport, if you want to have longevity in running as a recreational pursuit, you need to start to, you know, set up some schedules, set up some sort of a plan to make it like that, right? You
Mhm.
can't just come in blind and hope that, you know, the kilometers will click by and it's all going to work for you magically because it's not. You know,
Yeah.
you're going to have the physical adverse outcomes that come with running at times. You're going to have the challenges there. You're going to have the mental piece. And I think that's the piece that a lot of people don't talk about and why we're talking about it now. But yeah, for me, make it easy on yourself. Plan out your runs as best you can. I'm not a rigid planner
Yeah.
of running. I go with feel. And I have goals. I have really ambitious goals in terms of completion of difficult races. So for me, I would put myself in kind of the recreational racer category, not an overwhelming amount of pressure on me to achieve
Mhm.
great success, but certainly pressure from myself. And intrinsically, I put the pressure on myself to complete and to do as good as I possibly can do in
Yeah.
those pursuits. And with that comes the responsibility of training appropriately,
Um,
as yeah, as I would
yeah.
with anything.
So that being said, just you kind of hit on a point there where you're kind of a recreational racer and you're maybe not running as much as some other people, but you are running. Have you felt like that burnout? Yeah. So maybe you're not 6 days a week, but
Right.
you're 3 days a week. Have you felt the burnout from like one more thing to do? I have to schedule a run in. Have you gotten to that point yet?
I don't think it's burnout,
Yeah.
but there's a mental load.
Yeah.
There's a well, how am I going to get this in? And, or it's minus 25.
Yeah.
Do I really have to put on my cleated shoes and go run in
Yeah.
this? Because it doesn't feel awesome.
Yeah.
And that it's not burnout, but there's a component of I don't want to do it,
Yeah.
and I don't know how to categorize that, but it becomes mental. I mean, running's mental. You hear
It is
that.
mental.
You hear that. It's super
Yeah.
physical,
We're
but
mental.
it's definitely mental.
Yeah.
And I think that uh, I like the sport. I like the competition. I like
Yeah.
running. And I know through other sports that there's components of sports that are mental. And
Yeah.
in running, it's very mental, especially as you get up to some greater distances. So I take that learning from the very few races I've done, and I apply it to the training. I go, well, of course, this is going to be mentally fatiguing too.
Yeah. Hard.
Hard. And you go, well, if it were easy, everybody'd be doing it.
Yeah,
So we're doing a
totally.
hard thing. And for myself, I can kind of flip the switch and be like, hey, yeah, you got to go do it.
Yeah.
This not gonna be fun. You're gonna sit at your treadmill and stare at the wall for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be like
Not fun.
not fun.
Yeah.
But you're gonna do it because you want the payoff in July and August when we have those big A races that we've talked about in the past. So
Yeah.
that's why I do it, because I know today George is letting future George down if you don't work in. And that's, you almost have to trick yourself. I heard some days, sometimes on a Monday, I can show up to work and be just a negative Nancy. And somebody, it was my new HR rep, told me, she's like, I just tell myself that today's the greatest day. And if I keep telling myself over and over again that today's going to be a great day, and, I trick my brain, and it kind of manifests in the way that you approach and present in the world. So I'm trying to do that with running. Like, this is going to be a great run. It's going to help you.
Oh, so wise.
It works sometimes, but you know what? Like, whatever little thing you can do to help, to give you the edge to get up and do the work, or to get out and run at period at all, even if you're not training for anything, I think is great. Whatever that takes, like, find that little angel on your shoulder telling you to do this or
It's
that.
going to be the greatest run of your life.
The greatest run of your life.
So that's
Whatever
how
it
you
might be,
handle
like,
the overwhelm and kind of
yeah,
the
yeah, I think so.
not the burnout for you, but
No.
how you kind of go about.
Right. In my rookie brain, I don't have the burnout yet, but I can very much see how a person can get there. And now I'd pose that question to you, because you've been running a lot longer than I have. Have you felt the burnout?
Yeah, 100%. So, coincidentally, we didn't choose this based on the past week, but this past week, for one thing, I thought on Monday I was Mrs. Olympia and decided to lift all the heavy weights in the gym.
You're strong.
And squats and lunge like it was my full-time job.
Are you a CrossFitter?
Well, you would think so. I would have thought so on Monday. You would have thought I was, applying for the CrossFit Games or however they do it. See? But yeah, so anyways, so I destroyed myself, all of that to say. But not only that, but I was more or less mentally destroyed from my work week, I would have to say. And so, and there was a lot of travel time and a lot of late nights on this past week, and really, really mentally taxing. And then you still have to come home and show up, for your family and your friends and your relationship and even your animals, right? So I think that the burnout, I really felt it. Not only was I extremely sore, I wasn't, sleeping well because of the mental load of work and that kind of thing. And then my runs I felt were quite crappy, to be honest. I was on a deload week, so a few less kilometers that means for me. But regardless, 5 or 6K was a struggle.
Yeah.
And for me, who runs, quite far distances for the most part, I usually do double that in a day. That was an interesting and humbling experience, right? So, and I did feel the burnout. I felt like it's another thing that I have to schedule in and do. Usually I feel the joy in that and I love that. But this week it was definitely suffering from some of that burnout. I'm in like the depths of that training block too. So that adds to it. And then it started to snow again. And I thought, why do you hate me, world? But yeah, no, I was So then I couldn't even get outside, right? Which is
Yeah.
like the one thing that kind of like brings you joy at the end of a busy day. And so then I'm back on the treadmill
Oh.
and I thought, oh my goodness. And again, so thankful to have a treadmill to run on. And these are, small peanuts as far as problems go. But I definitely was feeling that overwhelming burnout this week.
Right.
And
And
I'm sure you saw that.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And like you touched on it there, excuse me, the weight of the world, like you can't just divide them.
Yeah.
Like your
Yeah.
work life, your private life, your personal life, it's all going to trickle
Oh,
into the
yeah.
training. It's going to affect the training. But if you were to look at it in a microcosm, like if you're just looking at the training itself, and again, I don't think you can separate the two because one impacts the other. So
Yeah.
the burnout and or the mental side of it is going to be linked to that piece always. There's always going to be a connection there that's going to
Yeah.
factor into how you run and how you present and how you do that training.
Mm.
But there's ways that you can make that better. And I think that's maybe something that we can help our listeners with. We can maybe impart like kind of what we do to break that up. And one thing like I was dreading coming into the winter was, because you'd ran outside last year and I was like, you're nuts. You are crazy. But then I started doing it this year and it was really nice to spend a huge chunk of time in the winter running outside with appropriate footwear. I was like fretting sitting on the treadmill all the time because that gets tough. And even if you have to do it, say you live in the North Pole or somewhere that's minus 80 and you just can't go
All those
outside.
people.
But we're in Alberta, Canada. It's frigging cold.
Close to the North Pole.
Yeah. But you can do it. But if you have to do treadmills,
Yeah.
go then and you have one at home, leave your home and go to the gym
Yeah.
and get on the treadmill. Go
Yeah.
to your favorite Globo gym. Just break up the scenery.
Yeah,
And that can be a big boost
Yeah.
mentally. If you are intending to run through the winter, you can do it. Like
Yeah.
dress appropriate. I was so pleasantly surprised with how good it felt, how comfortable I felt when I dressed appropriately. And I know that sounds pretty basic, but I like buy the shirt that wicks the sweat away,
Yeah.
buy the right layers,
Yeah.
buy running toques, running gloves, the right sock, and you will have a pretty good experience. I
Yeah.
mean, it was unbelievable how quickly you warm up and like it's
Yeah.
nice. It's not bad at
And
all.
you're happy to be outside.
So happy to be
Yeah.
outside. And it changes the scenery.
Yeah.
If you're sick of running the same paths, if you're sick of running the same roads, take a 5-minute drive.
Yeah.
You go drive outside of town and run a secondary highway
Totally.
if you
Yeah.
want to. It'll
Run a
change.
gravel road.
Yeah, it'll change the scenery up. Do some tempo work. Do
Yeah.
some stride work. Slow
Yeah.
it down. Speed it up. Just mix your approach up. Switch up the training a
Even
little bit.
minimally.
Yep.
And I think that overwhelm and that burnout that can change for you, right?
Absolutely.
And I think you're totally right. The burnout did come from not only like cumulatively, the busyness of life and that kind of thing, but it's been months and months that
Right.
I've done the same road loops, and I try and switch them up, but
Yeah.
ultimately we only have so many roads, especially when you're doing 20 and 30 kilometers. The scenery gets old, and the same treadmill.
We didn't talk about, but run with a friend.
Yeah.
Run with
Yeah.
your partner, run with a friend,
Yeah.
run with a group of people.
Yeah.
Go
So
to a
change
run
it
group.
up if you can.
Yep,
Yeah.
if you can.
And then, I guess that kind of leads into like lightening the load, right? Like, what does that look like? I think, we're kind of talking about that now, but
Yeah.
running with a friend and changing things up, and also realizing that, and I'm like super, super, I'm like the person who does this probably more than anyone, is I make running very serious. Like I think about it quite seriously, right? When you're, planning and prepping and that kind of thing. But really it's just running. You know what I mean? Like, and when we have goals, and I absolutely love it, but it's just a run, like it'll be okay. And so simplifying some of those kind of
Yeah.
mental processes and mental thoughts, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been riffing on there for a bit. Just you got to find ways to make it easier.
Yeah.
Get ahead of it, schedule it in, automate,
Yeah.
make your schedule a thing that you can put up on a wall.
Yeah.
So if you're a family person, you have kids, you have a spouse, whatever it might be, so they can see it, takes that stress off. They know when you're going to be going, where you're going to be going.
Yeah.
Work with what you have.
Yeah.
Like we touched on, run with people, run with friends, change the scenery up, listen to music, do some other things.
Yeah.
and breathe and just know, yeah, end of the day, it's running. Like
Yeah.
if you do it for a career, different story. But for most of us, it's probably just a passion or a recreational pursuit.
Yeah.
And
Sport.
you don't have to do it every day. Take the day off. If it's too stressful, then, you know, yeah, take some days off.
Thumbs down to that.
Prioritize accordingly,
Yeah.
and don't put that pressure on yourself all the time.
Yeah.
If it's becoming mentally overwhelming for you, I think, you know, you need to address it. You need to find a way forward that makes it not a burden, and know that you're not alone. Like, it can be overwhelming at times. Everything that, you can encapsulate within the running world can add stress to a fun pursuit if you let it.
Yeah.
So don't overthink it all.
And I think too, like you can think outside the box a little bit as well. And if you're a busy parent and you have a 30-kilometer run or you have a 20-kilometer run, there is no shame in doing 10 kilometers in the morning and 10 kilometers
Just
in the
break it
evening.
up.
I think we get like on this, there's this mental thing or this thought process that, a long run, if it's not in succession or if it's not all at once or if it's not specific pace or whatever, then it's just like toss it out. There's no point. And it's if you have to work in between nap times, if you have to work in between responsibilities and work, do your 10 in the morning and do your 10 in the evening. There is no shame on that. You're getting your kilometers in. It's about time on feet. And so do that, right? Like make that work for you. I mean, that's a great name for a podcast. But yeah, but I think that just like having the freedom to say, you know what, today it was good enough for today. I did what I could do today. Maybe I split up my long run or I made it look a little differently. And sometimes I'll have a 15K day and then the next day a 10K and I'll switch those days up depending on.
Right. And we're still learning it. Important to know, like, you, the viewers, let us know your thoughts. Share in the comments. We're looking for ways to lighten the mental load too.
Yeah.
And we struggle with it. That's why we wanted to talk about it, because we're real people. We have real jobs and real commitments, and we struggle with this at times. It's a thing that we noticed within our day to day. So we figured and assumed you probably noticed it too. And we'd love to hear from you if you have any comments.
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah. Let us know what your thoughts are on not only this topic, but also kind of that mental load. And if you see it parallel life at all, and if you kind of feel overwhelmed by it, or maybe you don't, and maybe you think of it a little less seriously than the rest of us.
Yeah. We're mentally frail.
If so, kudos to you. Yeah. We're mental.
Don't shame us. I can't handle it. I can't take another.
You'll need to go for a very long run if you make him feel bad for him.
That's right.
But yeah, thank you so much for listening. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments. And that's it for the podcast today.
Subscribe. Bye.